Get started.
सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं
करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै।
ॐ
शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति।
श्री गीता ॐ
पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां
भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुक्तां मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे तुल्लारविन्दाय सहस्रनेत्रा येन त्वया भारततल्यपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवैत्रेयपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो बहवो दुग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्ससुधीर्भोक्ता तुष्टं गीतामृतं महत् वसुदेवसुतं देवं तं सचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं भीष्मद्रोणतथा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवती कृपेन्वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोत्तीर्णा खलु पाण्डवैरननदी कैवर्तककेशवः पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्धगन्धोत्कटं नानाध्यानगणेशरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाबोधितं लोके सज्जनषट्परैरहरः पेपीयमानं मुदा भूयाद्भारतपङ्कजं कलिमला प्रध्वंसि न श्रेयसे मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम् यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुवन्ति नित्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदे गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः। देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः
Hari Om. So as we are aware, section 2 of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, chapters 7 to 14, is about knowledge of Bhagavan and the aspect of devotion to him. In chapter 7, Bhagavan said that he will give to Arjuna, and through Arjuna to all of us, not only the intellectual clarity in the form of jnana, but give it along with experiential wisdom or vijnana. Knowledge is something that one gets, and Bhagavan gives us the same. Wisdom, on the other hand, needs to be attained, and Bhagavan enables the same. And he does both through the presentation of a scientific outlook, giving systematic explanations throughout the Bhagavad Gita. Further, he does this by giving us the knowledge or jnana about the nature of the Lord, who is to be known, and then by guiding us on various methods of contemplation on this Bhagavan or his nature upon him, which is upasana. While the primary focus of 8 is the latter, which is contemplation, upasana. The focus of chapters 7 and 9, which we are going to start now, chapter 9, the focus is jnana or knowledge. And that is what we start today, this Saturday. Raja Vidya Raja Guhya Yoga. Technically, Bhagavan as an object of knowing is referred to as Jnaya Brahman. And technically as an object of contemplation is known as Dhyaya Brahman. From a knowledge perspective, Bhagavan in this chapter touches upon the relationship between the Saguna Brahman and Prakriti. We have read about that earlier. The ways of the ignorant, the ways of the devoted, the ways of the enjoyment seekers, and the aspect that the Ishvara is everything, all in all. And the worship of Ishvara is very, very easy. This is what he will cover in this chapter. And he starts by first glorifying this knowledge in the first 3 verses. So let us start chapter 9.
Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha
Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha.
Navamodhyayaha
Navamodhyayaha.
Raja Vidya Raja Guhya Yogaha
Raja Vidya Raja Guhya Yogaha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Idam tu te guhyatamam
Idam tu te guhyatamam
pravakshyamyanasuyave
pravakshyamyanasuyave
jnanam vijnana sahitam
jnanam vijnana sahitam
yajñātvā mokshyase shubhat.
yajñātvā mokshyase shubhat.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Idam tu te guhyatamam pravakshyamyanasuyave jnanam vijnana sahitam yajñātvā mokshyase shubhat.
So tute means indeed to you, or we can say but to you. In this context, since Bhagavan is just starting the chapter, indeed to you who anasuyaha, one who does not cavil, one who is not of fault finding in nature. Pravakshyami, I shall now declare, is what Bhagavan says. What will he declare? Idam, this. Guhyatamam, the greatest secret. Jnanam, knowledge. Vijnana sahitam, along with experience. Jnatva, having known, yaja, with. Jnatva, yajñātva, having known which. Mokshyase, you shall be free. Ashubhat, Mokshashe Shubhat is one word, but it is Moksha Ashubhat. Free from the impure. So to you who does not cavil, I shall surely declare this. I shall indeed declare this. The greatest secret, the most profound knowledge, along with experience, which having known, you will be free from the impure and the evil. We have seen earlier what impure is, what evil is. Impure is nothing but the disturbances that are there in our mind. And evil is the result of those disturbances that the various types of paradharma, the various types of activities that we perform that are not aligned to dharma. And it also works other way around. We perform those activities, and because of which the disturbances occur in our mind. And Bhagavan says, idam. Idam here stands for what has been spoken to you earlier. Remember, we are on chapter 9. So Bhagavan has been talking for a long time. What has been spoken to you earlier, what will be told to you in the future and now. So idam refers to the past, to the future, and to the present. Pravakshami. I shall explain, I shall declare. And not only I shall declare or explain, I shall explain to you very well, so that you comprehend, so that you understand. Pravakshami comes from prakarshane vakshami. Prakarshane, enlighten. I'll explain to you in such a manner that you will be enlightened. And why will I explain to you? Why will I declare this knowledge to you? Because anasuyave, because you are one who does not have the nature of finding faults. If anyway, people are not going to believe Arjuna, they're saying, what are you talking, Krishna, wasting my time? Then there's no point in Krishna talking. Arjuna is, first he asked for it. He wants this knowledge. Shishyasteham shadimam tvam prapannam. Please share with me. I want to learn. I am your Shishya. I bow to you. And then he is receptive. He is attentive. He is asking questions. So neither are you doubtful in nature. Doubtful meaning complaining in nature. You can have doubts, ask questions, but not doubtful of what is being told. And you are engaged. Asuya comes from guneshu dosha darshanam. In what is good, finding faults, seeing faults. What nonsense is this? This doesn't make any sense to me. This is not for me. Cavil essentially is born out of conceit or jealousy, or conceit and jealousy. And it prevents a human being from rising in knowledge. When you doubt the source of the knowledge, or when you doubt the knowledge itself, you don't learn it. And thereby, in this case, preventing a divine disposition. Bhagavan says that he will share this knowledge only when the person is anasuyave. And then he says, jnana vijnana sahitam. Knowledge along with the experiential wisdom. Knowledge here refers to something that presents itself. If the means of knowledge is there, then the knowledge arises. As simple as if I have the sight to see and I see some element. I'm seeing your Sarika's face now. I have the knowledge that Sarika is in this Zoom satsang. So the pramanam or the means enable the knowledge by itself. It is said that pramayaha karanam pramanam. The reason for knowledge are the means. For the object world, like I explained just now, the means of knowledge are the sense organs, the mind and the intellect. So the sense organs will initially perceive, the mind, the objective mind process it, then it takes it to the intellect processes it, pushes it to the subjective mind, which then through the organs of action help us to permeate outside, express outside into our environment. For the realization of the self, the pramana or the means are the shastras. Like I said, the eye is required to see, to perceive the world. Obviously, when I say eye, the other sense organs also. But the eye cannot see itself. For the eye to see itself, it needs a reflective medium, like a mirror or this camera which is turned on to me, or a water body that reflects, some reflective medium. The reflective medium for understanding the I, as in the I, the letter I, which stands for the self, in this case, that is the Shastras. And what is the knowledge that is available in the Shastras? What is it about? Number one, Bhagavat Tattva or Brahma Tattva, which is the subject or the Vishaya of knowledge. And secondly, Bhagavad Bhakti or Brahma Bhakti, which is devotion towards the subject itself. It is bhakti that converts knowledge into experiential wisdom. We see that in our day-to-day life. For us to actually perform really well in something, we have to imbue completely be absorbed in that knowledge. And that full, complete absorption comes from bhakti. And it is experiential wisdom that converts knowledge into bhakti. So it works both ways. Thus Bhagavan says, I will give you both. And what kind of knowledge is this? Guhya tamam. Guhya means secret. Guhya tara means something which is more secret. And Guhya tamam is something which is most secret. Like we see in government files, right? Secret, top secret. Extremely confidential. Right? So something which is most secret. Now secrets, especially when we are referring to government files, secrets are of two types. And when you're referring to government files, it is something that should not be told, should not be shared. It has to be guarded, confidential. And another type of secret is something that is least known. Even if it is shared, even if it is shared through loudspeakers, even if it is shared loud and clear, it remains unknown. And even those who know it only at an intellectual level, not at an experiential level. Thus, it is Guhya because Jnana may be there, but it does not convert into Vijnana. So that kind of a Guhya tamam knowledge I will share with you. And Bhagavan says, Yagyatva, knowing this knowledge, knowing this secret, Moksha se Shubhat, having known which you will be free from all impurities and all evil. Ashubha, the most impure thing that a human being can have is what? Ignorance. Ignorance is the most impure thing because ignorance leads to limitations. Limitations leads to a sense of individuality. And individuality leads to indulgence in doership and enjoyership, in karta and bhokta. And that karta and bhokta leads to papa and punya. And punya and papa is what leads to punarjanma. That is why the most highest of impurities is ignorance. We also saw initially, when we did our satsang, the first satsang, introductory, that the ladder of fall starts with ignorance. And Bhagavan says all of this will be gone, this entire chain that starts from ignorance, this lineage of calamity, the Ananta Parampara. And Bhagavan says, you will be freed from it, the cycle, parampara of life and death. In the beginning of chapter 7, Bhagavan says, Jnanam tehamsa vijnanam idam vakshamyas seshataha yagyatva neha bhuvanyat jnatavyam avashishyate. This is the second verse of chapter 7. There Bhagavan is saying, having known which, same knowledge is referring to. Having known this same knowledge, there remains nothing else to be known, which implies Sukha Prapti. And here Bhagavan is saying, having known which, all the impurities and aspect of doing evil will go away. This implies Dukkha Nivriti. It is said that in Vedanta, that moksha is nothing but Atyantika Dukkha Nivriti plus Paramananda Prapti. So cessation of all sorrows and attainment of supreme bliss. So in chapter 7, Bhagavan said, I will show you how through this knowledge you can be blissful. And here Bhagavan is saying, I will show you how through this knowledge you can be completely free of sorrows. What a beautiful way to glorify this knowledge. And Bhagavan now continues praising the art of self-perfection through this knowledge in the second verse.
Rajavidya Rajaguhyam
Rajavidya Rajaguhyam
Pavitramidamuttamam
Pavitramidamuttamam
Pratyakshaavagamam Dharmyam
Pratyakshaavagamam Dharmyam
Susukam Kartum Avyayam
Susukham Kartum Avyayam
Rajavidya Rajaguhyam Pavitramidamuttamam Pratyakshaavagamam Dharmyam Susukam Kartum Avyayam.
Rajavidya Rajaguhyam. Rajavidya, the king of knowledge. Rajaguhyam, the king of secrets. Idam, this. Uttamam, highest. Pavitram, purifier. And Pratyaksha. Pratyaksha, that which is realizable, that which is direct. Avagamam, means of knowledge. Dharmyam, according to righteousness. Susukham, very easy. Kartum, to perform. Avyayam, imperishable. So Bhagavan is continuing to praise this, to glorify this knowledge. He says this knowledge is royal knowledge. This knowledge is a royal secret. This is the highest purifier. This knowledge is realizable directly by its means. This knowledge is according to dharma, aligned with dharma. This knowledge is very easy to perform, and this knowledge is imperishable. Rajavidya. So is it knowledge of the kings or king of knowledges? So it certainly was the knowledge of the kings, like King Janaka, for example. We have seen that earlier. I don't know about today, whether today's kings have this knowledge or not. Highly doubtful. But in those days, kings like Janaka had this knowledge. They were experts. But the meaning here is that it is the king of all knowledge. This is because all knowledge pertaining to samsara is limited. Because why? Samsara itself is limited. We saw that, how the world perishes day and night of Brahma and all of that, right? This knowledge is beyond samsara. Every other knowledge removes some ignorance related to the world. This knowledge removes all ignorance. And he says, Rajaguhyam, king of secrets. It remains a secret even after being shared repeatedly. Meaning most people do not know it. And even those who know it have not experienced it. That is why Rajaguhyam. Pavitram idam uttamam. The greatest of purifiers. That which removes dirt or impurity is pavitra, is a purifier. Right? We use this, what is that called? Which we...
Sanitizer.
Sanitizer, right? Today's Pavitram. Sri Hanuman Chalisa starts with the first of the shlokas, Shri Guru Charana Saroja Raja, Nijamana Mukura Sudhari, Bharanau Raghuvara Bimala Jashu, Jo Dayaka Falachari. Cleansing my mind. See, I have to make my mind pure, removing it of all impurities. How? And why? Because my mind reflects my thoughts. That's why I would like to purify it. and I want to make it calmer. Because when the mind becomes calm, then it is ready to receive. Then it is ready to meditate. And how do I do it? With the dust of Guruji's lotus feet. So Tulsidasa is referring to Hanumanji's lotus feet. From the dust of your feet, I will cleanse my mind. It's indicative. And once I have purified my mind, I will describe the unblemished glory of Rama, which then bestows the four fruits. The four fruits that are referred to here are Artha, Kama, Dharma, and Moksha. We saw this in the introductory satsang too. Artha, Kama, and Dharma are pertaining to the samsara, to worldly life. Moksha is the mokshase that Bhagavan is referring to here. That freedom from sorrows and that attainment of bliss. So what is the biggest impurity these days? I think there will be a unanimous response to this, the coronavirus, right? Today, in our view, the biggest impurity is the coronavirus. And that impurity has led to unexpected as well as unacceptable deaths. It's very unnatural, it's not a natural way in our perception still. In Bhagavan's perception, it is a natural way only. But in our perception, it's unacceptable. And if we ever had this misconception, I think we always have this misconception that we are above it all. We are so powerful. The human being through his intellect has become so powerful, ruling the world. This has proven it to be amongst the biggest of misconceptions. This has practically brought us down to our knees. Hopefully, when we are in our knees, the other virus will fly above our head. But what is the root cause for this situation really? Is it really this virus that somehow Bhagavan has injected into this quote-unquote samsara? The biggest impurity, even bigger than this coronavirus, is this aspect of I plus I want. We saw that earlier, right? The root cause of all problems. I and I want. And this I plus I want has led to extreme selfish pursuits that has caused problems for us, ourselves, and for future generations. Whichever generation practiced this I plus I want, we continue to do. And the problems, what have we done? We have found band-aid solutions, temporary fixes. We have not found permanent solutions. We just create a problem, find a temporary solution to that problem. And this has been going on for decades. If in a dream, we are chased by a tiger and the tiger is going to eat us, on the verge of eating us, what is the solution? We have to wake up. That's the solution. Humanity has to wake up. That's going to be the permanent solution. And wake up from what? Wake up to the reality that this knowledge is the king of all knowledges. Make it less of a secret, as much less as possible. Thereby purify ourselves. And when we do that, our problems will seemingly miraculously evaporate. Seemingly miraculously. But actually what will happen, because we adopt this approach, because of that, it would start, or we would start doing things that would result in a fundamental shift in our behavior, followed by fundamental shift in how we act. And that then will be the solution, will lead slowly, step by step by step, to a permanent solution. Otherwise, Bhagavan anyway says, no, it will come, the time will come when the pralaya happens. And how do we know that there is a solution? Bhagavan says, Pratyaksha Vagamam. It is direct. It is realizable through its means. Pratyaksha means it is direct, meaning that the result is apparent. And agamam is that by which one comes to know, the means of knowledge. Another meaning of agamam is it is the means of the result. So there are two meanings. Agamam is the means of knowledge, and it is also the means of the result. The method of gaining the knowledge and the result of having that knowledge. Thus, because this knowledge is pratyaksha vagamam, Bhagavan says that both the method and the result are within the control of the one who knows this knowledge, of the knower. How beautiful it is. If you know this, the method and the result are both in control. Again, going back to my favorite of examples, right? If Federer has to hit that beautiful forehand dream shot in the court, or Sachin Tendulkar has to hit that mind-blowing straight drive, what has happened? He has practiced it so much that he has internalized it. He's devoted to it. That knowledge, that book knowledge of how to hit that stroke has got converted into experiential knowledge. And that experiential knowledge just oozes out effortlessly. Both the method and the result are in the control of that person. And we all watch and clap and applaud. Any of it, a concert, when the musicians, they get into that crescendo, we all just sit in a trance. Both the theoretical as well as the experiential knowledge has got so much seeped into the person that it just oozes out, comes out seamlessly, effortlessly, flows out. And it's so apparent. And then Bhagavan continues, not only all of this, it says it dharmyam, it is aligned to dharma. Which means that the result is aligned to the principles of righteousness. Which means what? That the result of action is the best possible result that one could have. What better result than being aligned to righteousness? And that is what will slowly lead to the permanent solution. And he says, Susukham kartum. Susukham. Sukham is easy. Susukham is very easy. Susukham kartum, very easy to attain. Avyayam, imperishable, does not decay. Vyaya means decay. Avyaya means does not decay. It lasts forever. And what about those who do not want this? Those who are quote unquote the cavil types, those who don't want this. Bhagavan touches upon that in the next verse.
Ashraddhadana purushaha
Ashraddhadana purushaha
dharmasyasya parantapa
dharmasyasya parantapa
aprapya mam nivartante
aprapya mam nivartante
mrityu samsara vartmani
mrityu samsara vartmani.
Ashraddhadana purushaha dharmasyasya parantapa aprapya mam nivartante mrityu samsara vartmani.
Asya, those purushaha, people who are ashraddhadana, are without faith. Dharmasya, in this duty, in this pursuit of acquiring that knowledge. Aprapya, without attaining. What? We may think without attaining the knowledge. Of course, mam, without attaining me. Nivartante, they return. Mrityu samsara vartmani, in this path, in this world of death, this cycle that we saw the last time in chapter 8. They return, they come back. He uses the word parantapa, O scorcher of foes. So this Ashraddhadana is a foe. Please burn it. Parantapa, one who scorches one's enemies. Ashraddha is a big enemy of yours, O Arjuna. Burn it, just scorch it. So these people or those people who are without faith in this pursuit, in this duty, without attaining me, return to the path of rebirth that is fraught with death. O scorcher of foes. A person who does not have faith in the existence of this Swarupa and the means of attaining it, the sadhana. Remember, we do sadhana after every chapter. The means of attaining, what we should dedicate ourselves to, and the result, prapya. They remain in the pathways of samsara or birth and death. A person with faith, on the other hand, moves fast. We see that in our day-to-day life also. One without faith becomes casual. One without faith does not devote oneself to one's own pursuit. One's own pursuit, by the way, whatever it may be. Here we are talking about those who are interested in this pursuit. People who have come a long way after Yoga Rudha. So those who are interested, those who are deep into the spiritual pursuit, but they are still without faith, is who Bhagavan is referring to here. So when you without faith, it becomes casual. We know we have some sense of spirituality. We say we have to say our prayers. We say, but there is also lack of faith. There is also a lot of distraction, because of which the approach becomes casual. And when that happens, we get seeped into the worldly affairs, which through our selfish goals. And while living, such a person is not able to perform actions with that spirit of yajna, that spirit of sacrifice, that spirit of mutual coexistence. And such a person goes around and round and round in circles of extremities while living. What are those extremities? Sukha dukkha, labha labha, jaya jaya. Keeps going round and round. And so many other extremities. Joy, sorrow, profit, loss, victory, defeat. And Bhagavan says that even after death, so this is while living, even after death, such a person continues to go around in that cycle or in that circle of birth and death. So while in the first two verses, Bhagavan glorified the attainment of this knowledge and wisdom in extremely positive terms, there is one more way of glorification. That is to say, what if not? What if not? In the third verse, Bhagavan actually brings in the element of beware. If you are ashraddha, if you have ashraddha, in terms of what the one without faith, what happens when there is lack of faith or when one is without faith. There is this beautiful adaptation of the story of the frog in the well that Swami Vivekananda, he first recited it in the World of Parliament in 1893. There he was saying that, people of different religions are in different wells. You are a frog in, the Hindu is the frog in the Hindu well, the Christian is the frog in the Christian well, the Muslim is the frog in the Muslim well. That is what Swamiji was referring to. Whereas we need to get out of our wells and see that it's all the same. That is what Swami Vivekananda was talking in the World's Parliament of Religions. There's a beautiful adaptation of that story. A frog was born in a well and it lived in the well. He was very happy in the well. In the well, he got all that he needed to eat. Whenever he wanted, he would go for a swim. And then there was a beautiful, nice flat rock. He would come back and eat and rest on that rock, gaze up at that sky with beautiful stars or blue sky with some clouds and all that. Very happy existence in the well. One day, another frog fell into the well. And the two of them got talking. The well frog asked the frog that had come in, "Where are you from?" And that frog said, "I am from a large lake that is not very far away." The well frog says, "Large lake? Oh, it can't be larger than my well. Nothing is larger than my well. You can see end to end, from one end to the other." So the frog actually takes a jump. "Is it this large?" Oh, the lake frog says, "Much larger." The frog then jumps from one end of the well to the other end. "Is it that large?" "Oh, it's much larger, probably 1,000 times larger than what your well is." And not only that, you well frog, there are so many more things that are available there. many more activities to indulge in, much more to eat than you get here. You have no idea. The well frog says, shut up, what nonsense. Don't try to fool me. Cavil. That cannot be true. Nothing can be bigger than this well. Nothing can be better than this well. Nothing can give me more bountiful aspects than this well does. After a lot of this discussion, the lake frog says, so why don't you do one thing, brother? Why don't you come with me to my home like I have come and seen your home? Please come. You're welcome to my place. So this well frog a little skeptically agrees, and they both set out. As soon as the well frog gets out of the well, it's astounded by the vastness of what he sees outside. And then when he goes to the lake, he's just stunned because, like the lake frog said, it's much bigger. There is a lot of more food in it. There's a lot more activities that this frog can do, a lot more other frogs that he can interact with. So he's having a ball of a time there, enjoying himself there. After some time, the lake frog says, brother, would you like to go back home? The well frog says, could I just be here? Can I just not go back, stay here? The moral of the story is that those who do not cavil, those who are willing to be receptive to acquiring this knowledge and wisdom, they are freed from the limitations of the world, this personal cocoon that we have built ourselves into. They are freed from this. And after thus glorifying this jnana, this vijnana, Bhagavan now in chapter 9 starts imparting that knowledge from verse 4.
Maya tatamidam sarvam
Maya tatamidam sarvam
jagadavyakta murtina
jagatavyakta murtina
matstani sarva bhutani
matsthani sarva bhutani
nachaham teshavastitaha
nachaham teshavastitaha
Maya tatamidam sarvam jagadavyakta murtina matstani sarva bhutani nachaham teshvavastitaha.
Teshvavastitaha, not teshavastitaha, teshvavastitaha. So sarvam, all, idam, this, all this, jagad, the world, all this world, tatam, is pervaded maya, by me. Avyakta murtina, in my unmanifested form. Sarva bhutani, all beings, matsthani, exist in me. Cha, and aham, na, I do not. Teshva vastitaha, I do not dwell in them. So all this world is pervaded by me in my unmanifested form. All beings exist in me and I do not dwell in them. So once again, what we did was rejumbling, some of the words to enable translation and also to make prose out of poetry. This is poetry. This is sage Vedavyasa's poetry. To convert that into prose and then translate it to English. So Bhagavan says, idam, this, what this, all that we comprehend, the sthula prapancha, the sukshma prapancha, the karana prapancha, which is the physical world, sthula prapancha, the subtle world, the sukshma prapancha, and the causal world, the karana prapancha. Sthula is all that is perceived by the sense organs. Sukshma is all that is perceived by the mind. And Karana is all that is perceived by the consciousness. And Bhagavan has made 3 statements here. Number 1, he says, the entire world as comprehended by you is pervaded by me. He uses the word Jagat. Jagati is Ja plus Ga plus Ti. Ja is Jayati, that which is born. Ga is Gayati, that which goes. And Ti is that which stays for some time. So this world is born, stays for some time and goes. That's the cycle that goes on and on and on. And Bhagavan says, I pervade all through a form that is not manifest to your senses and to your mind. That is my Satchitananda Swarupa. And then the second statement he makes, all beings exist in me. Remember, this is the knowledge he is giving us. He has started giving us the knowledge. All beings exist in me. I am the substratum. The entire world is superimposed on me, the substratum. And the third statement he makes, I am not in them, the world. Meaning, I am not affected by the modifications that the world, through this process of Jagati, the 6 modifications, we have seen this earlier, the Shadvikaras. What are they? Jayate, Asti, Vardate, Viparinamate, Apakshiyate, Vinashyati. Jayate, born. Asti, exist. Vardate, grows. Viparinamate, modifies. Apakshiyate, decays. Vinashyati, perishes. So these 6 modifications, I am not affected by them. I am not part of the world's ups and downs, and I remain unaffected by these changes. And now Bhagavan makes a seemingly contradictory statement in the next verse. We'll go to verse 5.
Nachamatstani bhutani
Nachamatstani bhutani
pashyame yogamaishwaram
pashyame yogamaishwaram
bhuta brinna cha bhutastaha
bhuta brinnascha bhutastaha
mamatma bhuta bhavanaha
mamatma bhuta bhavanaha
nachamatstani bhutani pashyame yogamaishwaram bhuta brinna cha bhutastaha mamatma bhuta bhavanaha.
Nacha, actually it is cha, na, and not bhutani, these beings, matstani, dwell in me. Pashya, behold, me yogam aishwaram, my divine yoga. And then he says, bhuta bhrit, na cha, supporting the beings, but not bhutastaha, dwelling in the beings. Mamatma, myself. Bhuta bhavanaha, bring forth the beings. So he says, and nor do these beings dwell in me. Behold my divine glory, behold my divine yoga, O Arjuna. Supporting the beings and not dwelling in them is myself, me. Bringing forth the beings again and again. The cause of all beings yet untouched. So Bhagavan has made a 4th statement here, and that statement is, the beings are not in me. He just said in the previous verse, all beings exist in me. And now he's saying the beings are not in me. So is this a contradiction? That's why Bhagavan hastens to add, behold my divine yoga, behold my divine glory. This implies that all creation are only my Maya. In reality, none of it is there. It just comes and goes. It appears and disappears. And while it is there, it is contained by my yogic power. And what is this divine yoga power? I am the cause for all beings, the divine yoga power. I am the cause for all beings, and I am the supporter of all beings. Yet I am not in them. My will is that which alone projects, sustains, and controls all of creation. So this divine yoga power is Bhuta Brita. Bhuta Brita is that which supports, that which nourishes, that which upholds, the material cause. Remember, we saw that earlier, the Upadana Karana. For example, the clay is the material cause for the pot. With the material clay, the pot is formed. And Bhuta Bhavana, That is also that yogic power of Bhagavan. Bhuta Bhavana, that which envisions and creates the efficient cause, the nimitta karana. For example, the potter is the efficient cause for the pot. Bhagavan says he is both. I am both the efficient cause and the material cause. I am both the nimitta karana and the upadana karana. However, I do not dwell in my own creation. Na bhutastaha. I may appear as the two karanas, but I am untouched by my creation. There is a very interesting example in Advaita Vedanta. It is really interesting. Seeing a rope in poor visibility, it is mistaken for a snake. So we mistakenly superimpose the image of a snake, which is illusory in nature. Because remember, in reality, there is no snake, onto the real rope. In reality, there is a rope. But we, through our mind, superimpose the image of that snake onto that rope. Why? Because of poor light. In the same way, we superimpose the illusion of elements of creation on Bhagavan. So, in that snake example, if there is total darkness, complete total dark, pitch dark, we would not see the rope. And if we don't see the rope, there is no question of thinking that it is a snake, of imagining it to be a snake. Here, in total darkness or ignorance, ignorance is bliss. When one is not a believer, or let's say one is in deep sleep, there is ignorance. And hence, because of ignorance, there is no possibility of error. Now let's take the other extreme, bright light. Again, we can see the rope very clearly. So there is no question of imagining it to be a snake. Here, knowledge is bliss. Full darkness and ignorance, ignorance is bliss. Light and knowledge, knowledge is bliss. When we truly understand this knowledge that Bhagavan is giving us, in complete knowledge, we know that only he is there. He only is. Everything else is Maya. So the error of mistaking the rope to be a snake happened only in partial light, when there is insufficient light, or if the eyesight is weak, defective eyesight. In that partial knowledge, what happens? We know that there is something out there. There is something. We don't know that it is a rope. But knowing that there is something, that thing is covered by darkness, but not entirely covered by darkness. So something is there. However, the fact that it is a rope, that is covered by not enough light. So because we know that there is something, but we don't know that it is a rope, we superimpose the imagination of a snake on that rope. And it becomes a snake. We substitute that actual image with our own mental image. What happens when light falls on that? The actual thing remains unchanged. The rope was a rope, is a rope, will be a rope in future also. But the imaginary thing that gets uncovered, that imaginary thing, it has not gone away. It's not like there was a snake there and it slithered away when the light was switched on. Let's say it's a torchlight. It has not gone away because it was never there. It was just there in our mind. Only the mind of the observer thought it was a snake. And being in the mind, by the way, that snake, quote unquote, illusory snake, gave rise to all kinds of thoughts and feelings. For example, fear. Oh my God, there's a snake, it will bite me. Then there is increased heart rate. There is sweating. All that happens, both physical, mental, intellectual. The body, mind, and intellect actually goes through the experience of a snake being there, where there was no snake. Similarly, the world in reality, which is not there, creates very real effects on the body, mind, and intellect of the person who is experiencing this world. when we understand and experience that knowledge that Bhagavan is giving us, these mistaken perceptions are corrected. And the associated disturbances which come with these mistaken perception, they also disappear. So a crucial point to note here is that the right knowledge is required to remove the misconception, not any knowledge. For example, if that snake is there and I start spraying Rama, 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 Krishna, 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 it will not run away because it was never a snake. Or if I start sitting there and meditating, let me meditate. The snake will not harm me. Nothing is going to happen. We'll just sit there. So the right knowledge is very important. There was this Amir Khan movie. I don't remember which one. He goes, he has to go on that rope, like a rope balancer, to save his friend who is hanging out there in the real world. And he goes there and he says, Rama, 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 Rama. After some time, it becomes Mara, 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 Mara. Right? So we just go through this foolish prayer of when we don't know. So the right knowledge is extremely, extremely critical. The only solution to figure out that imaginary snake was actually a rope is light. Similarly, the only solution to get over this unending cycle of samsara is this knowledge that Lord Krishna is giving us. That is the only solution. In ignorance, we see the world. In knowledge, we see only Bhagavan. So to recap the 4 statements, Bhagavan says, I pervade all. This is the same as the rope pervading the snake. Then second statement, all are in me. The snake is in the rope, in the mind of the beholder. I am not in all. The rope is not in the snake. And all are not in me. The snake is not in the rope because there is no snake. And Bhagavan now gives us an example in the next verse.
Yata kashastito nityam.
Yata kashastito nityam.
Vayus sarvatra go mahan.
Vayus sarvatra go mahan.
Tata sarvani bhutani.
Tatha sarvani bhutani.
Matstanityupadharaya.
Matstanityupadharaya.
Yata kashastito nityam. Vayus sarvatra go mahan. Tata sarvani bhutani. Matstanityupadharaya.
Yatha, as Mahan, this mighty Vayu, air or wind. Sarvatra, which is moving everywhere. Sarvatra go, moving everywhere. Astitaha, rests. Always nityam, in akasha, in space. As the mighty wind and air, moving everywhere, rests always in space. Tatha, so. Upadharaya, please understand, please know. Upadharaya. Know what? Sarvani bhutani, all beings. Matstha, rest in me. Nitya. Thus, understand. Even so, please know that all beings rest in me. Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said, and I quote, though the wind carries the good and the bad odor alike, it remains unaffected by both. Parabrahman is unaffected by the phenomenal universe, even though he is the substratum of all. Unquote. So the above, what we just saw, Bhagavan just said, the example that he gave, pertains to the world when it is there. The Ti of the Jagati, when it is existing. What about that wonderful theory that he taught us, that systematic law of rebirth, the Ja and the Ga of Jagati, the coming and the going, the story of the creator creating the world during his daytime and dissolving the entire lot during his nighttime. What about that? That Bhagavan talks in the next verse.
Sarva bhutani kaunteya.
Sarva bhutani kaunteya.
Prakritim yanti mamikam.
Prakritim yanti mamikam.
कल्पक्षये पुनस्तानि
कल्पक्षये पुनस्तानि
कल्पादौ विसृजाम्यहम्
कल्पादौ विसृजाम्यहम्
सर्वभूतानि कौन्तेय प्रकृतिं यान्ति मामिकां कल्पक्षये पुनस्तानि कल्पादौ विसृजाम्यहम्
Sarva Bhutani, O son of Kunti, he is saying, Sarva Bhutani, all beings, Yanti, go or merge, Mamikam, my Prakritim, nature. All beings, O son of Kunti, go merge into my Prakriti, my nature. When? Kalpakshaye, at the end of a kalpa. And then Aham, I, Visrijami, send forth. Again, Punaha, Tani, them, Kalpadau, at the rise of the next kalpa. So all beings, O son of Kunti, all beings go into my Prakriti or nature at the end of a kalpa, and I send them forth again at the beginning of the next kalpa. The time period kalpa that is referred to here is the 311.04 trillion years that we talked about. In human terms, human years. Every 311.04 trillion human years, the lifetime of the creator comes to a close. Lifetime of Lord Brahma comes to a close. And at that time, all beings merge into Bhagavan's nature. And then after another 311.04 trillion years, Bhagavan himself manifests all of creation, including the creator, Lord Brahma, the Hiranyagarbha. So Bhagavan says, Shrishti, I do. Sthiti, I manage. Laya, I enable. And then he says, how do all these things happen? The Shrishti, Sthiti, Laya, how do they happen? That he covers in the next verse.
प्रकृतिं स्वामवष्टभ्य
Prakritim swamavastabhya
विसृजामि पुनः पुनः
visrijami punah punah
भूतग्राममिमं कृत्स्नम्
bhutagramamimam kritsnam
अवशं प्रकृतिर्वशात्
avasham prakritirvashat
प्रकृतिं स्वामवष्टभ्य विसृजामि पुनः पुनः भूतग्राममिमं कृत्स्नम् अवशं प्रकृतिर्वशात्
Vashtabhya, having animated. What? Swam, my own prakritim, my own nature. Having animated my own nature, visrijami, I send forth, punah punah, again and again. Imam, this, Bhutagramam we have seen earlier, this multitude of beings, not just human beings, of all beings, this multitude of beings. Kritsnam, all. Avasham, helpless. Prakritir vashat, by force of nature. Having animated my Prakriti, I sent forth again and again these multitude of beings that are helpless by the force of this Prakriti itself. Avastabhya, having enlivened, giving life, animated. This act of animation takes place on a miniature scales on a day-to-day basis in our lives at all levels of our existence. For example, waking up in the mornings, we and all beings stretch. They wriggle their limbs in order to animate them. Farmers animate the field by plowing it. A student is animated by a nudge by the teacher or a shake-up by the teacher. What happens in all these animation? All these acts, essentially, spirit is infused into matter. And when spirit gets infused into matter, it gets animated. And Bhagavan says that I animate my own nature. At the beginning of the Kalpa, Prakriti comes from the unmanifest into manifest state. after Bhagavan has animated, having been animated by the Purusha, Bhagavan. And when this animation has happened and Prakriti becomes manifest, all beings helplessly and by force of this animated Prakriti come into existence. Just like we helplessly go to sleep or helplessly wake up from our sleep. So Prakritim is that Maya which depends on Bhagavan or the Purusha for existence, but in reality is not there. So Prakriti is neither Sat nor Asat. Sat is something that is ever there, always Nitya. Asat is something that is never there. Prakriti is not Sat because Sat is always there as consciousness. And it can always be experienced. Prakriti is not Asat because Asat is that which is not there and cannot be experienced even as an illusion. Then what is Prakriti? Prakriti is Mithya. Mithya is neither Asat nor Asat. That which is experienced, but in reality is not there. Like that snake, rope snake. It was experienced, very really experienced, but in reality not there. For example, a dream. It's experienced. We live through that dream. We wake up in sweat or we wake up very thrilled and happy, depending on the dream. But in reality, it was not there. Or the magic of a magician. He'll make these doves, white doves, they'll fly out of nowhere, of a small stick or something, or a hat. Or he'll cut a living life-size woman into two in front of our eyes. And then in the next moment, that woman is sitting in the next empty chair that is next to us. So something that is experienced by us, very really experienced by us, but in reality is not there. Similarly, the magic of this cosmic magician adds to the glory of what he creates, but does not add or subtract from him. But then, do they shackle him or do they bind him? Let's see that in the next satsang. And my mother just related this to Purnamidam, so which we will shortly say. Hari Om.
We'll repeat the verses from to 8. Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha Ata Rajavitya Rajaguhya Yogaha Navamodhyayaha Sri Bhagavan Vacha Idam Sute Guhyatamam Pravakshyamyanasambhave Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam Yajnatva Mokhyate Shobhat Rajavidya Rajaguhyam Pavitramidamuttamam Pratyakshavadamam Dharmyam Susukam Kartum Avyayam Ashraddadana Purushaha Dharmasya Parantapa Aprapyama Nivartante Mrityu Samsarani Maya Tadamidam Sarvam Tadavyaktamurtina Attani Sarvamutani Nachaham Vedavastitaha Nachamatstani Bhutani Pashyame Yogamaishwaram Bhuta Brinna Chabutastaha Amatma Bhuta Bhavanaha Yata Kashastito Nityam Vayu Sarvatra Mahan Tata Sarvani Bhutani Matstani Tyupadharaya Sarva Bhutani Kaunteya Pratintanti Kalpakshaye Punastani Kalpadau Visrajamyaham Prakritim Swamavashtabhya Visrajami Punah Punaha Bhutagramami Bhutam Avasham Prakriti Vashat. Om Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityodma amritam gamaya. Om Shanada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamedavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Hari Om. Thank you. I did see a hand raise.
Yeah, it was me.
Yeah,
I
hi Ram.
I don't know whether I can express myself properly. You said the unmanifest supreme manifests itself, has the power to manifest itself. So this unmanifest power is the nirguna state of the Lord.
I think last you got cut. Is the unmanifest power is what?
You told us that the unmanifest supreme man has the power to manifest himself, and so he manifests himself for very creation and various other things. So the unmanifest form is the nirguna form of the Lord, is it?
Correct.
But,
yes.
No. My question here is, if he is without attributes, how does he get the attribute to create?
That's a
Did you
beautiful.
get my point?
Yes, I did. If that supreme consciousness, that pure consciousness, is without gunas, without attributes, how does he get the power to or the attributes to create, to manifest? That is actually the best answer would be to be patient, because it's all going to come. But in a nutshell, see, that supreme consciousness does not need any of the attributes to be able to create. It happens by his will, by that Nirguna Bhagavan's will. That is what, and that will doesn't have his attributeless will.
So the will has nothing to do with the attributes.
Exactly.
Distinct things.
Yes. That is the yogic power that Bhagavan, and he'll expand it in future. That is that power of yoga that he's saying, behold my supreme yoga, behold the power of my yoga. That is that power, that is that will that enables all of this to happen.
Another question I have, which is not pertaining to today's lesson, but to the earlier one, we spoke about the supreme being and the lesser gods. I don't know in which class it was. Is it that he manifests himself in various forms to grant various boons? It is the same God. Does he, supposing it is for knowledge, he manifests himself in the form of, say, Ganapati or Saraswati. If it is for a boon, he manifests himself in the form of another. It is the same. Can I interpret it that way?
See, when he manifests, he just manifests. And all these forms that you're talking about, including the various deities, whether it is Ganapati, Saraswati, all the deities, they come forth. And then they have their respective quote unquote qualities. They have their respective gunas. They have their respective attributes. Based on their attributes, they are worshipped.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello.
Sir,
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Sir, with due respect, I offer my salutations to you and my respect to my other participants in the satsang. They are all eminent, educated minds. I respect them. Sir, in my little mind, out of what we have today read about 8 slokas in the chapter 9th. It refers to, out of innumerable qualities of the supreme power, 3 admissible, visible to us. That is omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent. I feel he has given a hint, not exactly specified in, but he has given a sufficient hint. Then the last shlok, last between, 7th shlok, Kalpakshaye punastani kalpadao visrijamyaham. That reminded me of a famous song of K.L. Sehgal, Bhor Suhani Chanchal Balak, Ladkani Dikhlaye, हाथ से बैठा गढ़े खिलौने, पांव से तोड़ता जाए, वो तो है एक मूर्ख बालक, तू तो नहीं नादान, आप बनाए आप बिगाड़े, ये नहीं तेरी शान. It's from the K.L. Sehgal's film Dushman. He had said that what in other words he says that the innocent child is creating toys, houses or something out of sand, and he's by hand he's making them, and by feet he's destroying them. He says it's not your business. It is someone else to create and destroy. It reminded me of the omnipresence, omniscient, omnipotent, and the creative destruction, what was referred in K.L. Sehgal's song. That's what, sir, I felt.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing, Sharma sir. Thank you very much. Very beautiful. Very, very nice.
Thank you so much. It was a very nice session. And Sharma uncle, it was really nice the way you explained. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
I thought you were going to ask a question.
No, the way he said about
Yeah,
the
beautiful.
cycle thing, that was really nicely said.
It was
And I thought
very,
it is over. The session is over. So I wanted to thank everybody. Bye-bye.
It was very beautiful, yeah. One very interesting observation in my mind is that in section 2, which is the nature of Ishvara and devotion, there are very few questions and discussion. In section 1, which was pertaining to the self, there was a lot of questions and discussions.
It's felt that he is hinting at another thing also. He has given the example of air. It is visible, felt by us everywhere. There is another invisible strong power created by Almighty. That is the gravitation power of planets and satellites, which sustains us. Air and gravitation power, these cannot be created artificially. We may refine the ordinary air by keeping away the nitrogen content and making it in oxygen concentrator. But air as such and gravitation power as such, in toys we can make magnetic toys, but the gravitational power which sustains this cosmos, universe, Earth and other planets, this is only Almighty's, and it is invisible. Where its origin, where it's controlled, just as the movement of air is uncontrollable by human mind, likewise is the gravitation power. We have to reconcile with it. It's the hidden.
Absolutely, sir. Yeah, beautifully put. And Kushagra noted your point about you will share something which connects with what Sharma sir said about K.L. Sehgal's verse, Munawar Rana, right? You said you will. Okay.
There's a very famous, poet or shair called Munawar Rana from Lucknow, UP. I believe it's Badaun or Lucknow. So it's like 6-7 stanzas which resonates to that emotion. So I'll share it later.
Sure.
Thank you.
Tanuja ji, you were going to say something?
No, I was just thanking you. It was a wonderful session. Every time, every session, I feel I'm getting so much as a
Thank you.
blessing.
Thank you. Thanks to all of us.
Somehow, the more we read Gita, the more we think we didn't know anything. That is the beauty of reading Gita. I don't know. I'm reading it for last 4-5 years, but every session is a new experience for me.
The more you read it, the more we get to know.
Okay. And sharing with others is also a pleasure. The way Sharma ji explained about gravitational force and movement of air, we hardly noticed all these things.
Absolutely. Yeah. If there's no other thought, then we can, anyone else, any other thought or comment? Otherwise, we can close the satsang for this week.
So one question, how should we start teaching about Gita to small children? Like
Actually,
my grandmother, 6-7
I think you
years
had
old.
asked this earlier also.
Huh?
I think you had brought this up earlier also once, if I remember.
No.
But yeah, you see, I would say, yeah, I think if we can get more and more stories, because children relate to stories. So if we can use stories to explain, even in our satsang, I also feel a lot more invigorated, and I see a lot more, participation when I am able to bring in some stories. Like last time we talked about Uddhava Gita, those kind, in some other, we had brought in some other stories. So I think children probably will relate most to stories. So if we can connect the learnings of Gita to some story which is there in our Purana or which is there in the modern world, that is the best way, is what I feel.
Okay, because they're learning shlokas, but they don't understand the meaning. And I don't know how to explain, they're so small. How can we,
If they're learning shlokas, it's very good, because if they learn at this age, they will remember forever. That's really good.
So my granddaughter recites,
Yeah.
but she asked me to explain, I'm not able to. Because there is no story in Gita. In Ramayana, there is story. But in Gita, I don't understand. They are being taught in the school, so she is just reciting the shlokas. So how do we establish the connect with small children about Gita?
Yeah, I
Sir,
think, yeah.
Sir, may I submit?
Yes,
Children, small children particularly, they know Gita by instinct, by their instincts. Their innocent mind is absolutely free, absolutely free. They are not, not carrying the engraved influence of grief, sorrow in their mind.
Okay.
If they are angry, next moment they become normal. Next moment they recover. In one moment they are breaking toy. In another moment they get hold and they adjust. By instinct they know the message of Gita by instinct. My observation of moving with children is this, that they know by instinct
Okay.
the principal teachings.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Nipun also shared on the text, on the chat, that there is a Gita for children by Rupa Pai. And it is available in, I'm sure it's available in Amazon also, Flipkart. He has given the link. Gita for children by Rupa Pai. And he says it's very good.
Rupa Pai. Okay.
Rupa Pai.
Thank you for suggesting.
An interesting share here is Rupa Pai is such an engraving author that Milind Soman picked her to narrate his life story, which is called Made in India. And Rupa Pai is the writer of that story. So yeah, definitely. Thanks, Nipun.
Okay. Are you taking Sanskrit classes also?
No, I'm not, but that I think Sarika will be more qualified than me to take Sanskrit classes. But in Chinmaya Mission offers lots of Sanskrit classes. Ramakrishna Mission, these are ones I found very good. Chinmaya Mission Sanskrit classes are really good.
Online?
Yes, online.
Okay. I'll find out.
Okay, thank you all. Hari Om. We will meet.
Hari Om. Thank you very
continue.
much, sir. Very kind of you. Thank you.
Hari Om. Hari Om.